Hello and welcome to the Higher Vibe. I'm your host, Jean Roorda. I'm having conversations with psychic friends. Today I have with me Raphaelle Tamura. She's a dear friend and she is a clairvoyant and spiritual healer and teacher. Welcome, Raphaelle.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
So good to see you and have you here with me today.
Thank you.
Oh, so tell us, Raphael. I don't even know if I've heard your story of growing up intuitive and psychic. Do you have any stories about first noticing that or first noticing that you were very attuned to spirit?
Yes, some of my stories take a long time, so I'll try and keep them as brief as possible. But both of my parents had abilities, certain kinds of abilities. My dad was actually had predictive abilities, Irishman that he was,
Ah,
and my mom saw spirit guides sometimes. And so they were freely talking about these things when I was growing up, in spite of the fact that they were staunch Catholics.
yeah.
So it was not an unusual thing to talk about or have around. At least when I was growing up, I came from a family of 9 children, and most of them are Mensa Society, PhD, engineers, rocket scientists, that sort of thing. And I'm kind of the oddball that came in as a very sensitive psychic. And my very first introduction to, let's say, that I can remember, there's probably things that happened before this, but when I was 5 years old, I had a little accident where I cracked my head open and ended up in the hospital.
Oh
And
dear.
then a very short time after that, I had a dream that was so profound that it helped get me through my childhood.
Wow.
And it came in very symbolic. But because I was 5, I had a guide of some kind behind me, which was narrating what all the symbols meant.
Oh, that's so great. You had an
You know,
interpreter.
so many times we have these amazing dreams, and it sometimes takes a while to kind of pick them apart and then figure out the layers of what they mean and all that. This person told me what everything meant.
Wow.
And basically, without going into the whole dream, they told me just hang in there a little longer, uh, because you have an important thing to do this lifetime. But the first thing you have to get out of the way is you have some business with your family members. And at that time, when I was 5, I think there were only maybe 6 or 7 of the kids born by then. But they said my parents and my eldest brother were the ones I had karma to finish with. And they didn't use the word karma, but I understood. They said, you have to finish some business with these
Unfinished
people.
business. Yes.
They didn't say unfinished, they just said business.
Ah, yes. Okay. Yes.
And but what they said was, they were trying to encourage me because it was very hard to grow up in a very crowded family
Yeah.
with not a lot of money. There was a lot of love, so there wasn't any deficit there, but it was a lot of housework and taking care of things, and changing baby diapers from the time I was 4 years old.
Wow.
So in the dream, what they said was, when you grow up to be an adult, you're going to be this spiritual teacher. And they didn't say anything about a partner or anything at the time,
Yeah.
but it was directed at what my work would be in the lifetime. And to me, spiritual teacher, I was a Catholic girl, little Catholic girl, not in school yet. It meant I was going to end up becoming a nun.
Right.
Yeah, and I had that illusion until I got to be about 8 years old, and then it became another story.
Yeah.
But the dream was extremely profound and symbolic, and it had a lake and a boat and this beautiful mountain with the sunrise going behind it. And that mountain, as I know it now, is the mountain I ended up living on for 15 years with my wonderful psychic husband, Michael Tamura.
Yeah. Mount
But
Shasta.
yes,
So that was in the dream. I love
that
that.
was in the dream, although the sun never rises over Mount Shasta
Yeah.
from the
Yeah, maybe you have
from
to
the
be on the other
angle
side of it.
from the angle where we were living.
Right.
But
Right.
anyway, after this, the revealing, the various things that they told me, at the very end of my dream was an array of symbols and symbols and symbols. And I was 5. I didn't know what those meant. And the narrator went away when the symbols came. And
Interesting.
later on, I got to know the symbols. There was a rose symbol, there were crowns, and there were the cross. And And then there was a thing I didn't know what it was for a long time that turned out to be the symbol for the Masons, of all things.
Interesting. Yeah.
And just to skip way ahead for a second,
Yeah.
Michael and I ended up doing a lot of our weekend retreats in Masons buildings.
Interesting. Yeah, I
So
remember.
we had a pretty close connection with the local people that ran that building, and who had the Masons did their stuff and their mysterious
Right.
ceremonies and everything downstairs. So I had
Yeah.
this amazing dream, and when I woke up, this is the coolest part of it. When I woke up, I got to experience myself as an adult. I knew
Wow.
how tall I was going to be. I got to feel like an adult. And I remember thinking in my head, wow, uh, we're not really ever children.
Right.
We're just pretending we're children until we realize we're adults.
Yeah.
And I so wanted to tell my mom. And I remember hearing a voice in my ear when I had that thought, uh, that might
Keep
not
it to
be a
yourself.
good idea.
Yeah.
And the reason why is I had had a few kind of interesting little psychic experiences when I was younger where I'd run into my mom and tell her, and she didn't validate it.
Right.
And, but it's just what moms do when
Yeah.
they don't want their kids to, be crazy or
Yeah.
something.
Be weird or
So the dream is quite elaborate and everything, but it held me through for a lot of years, and then I would start to forget. I
yeah.
would start to forget that I had a purpose that I came in for, that I was going to be this spiritual teacher. The only part of it I remembered is I'm probably going to be a nun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but then as soon as I would start to forget, I would have the dream again and
Wow.
again
So it was a
and
recurring
again. It
dream.
was a recurring dream
Oh,
and
I love
recurred and
that.
recurred. And I had started having astral experiences with boyfriends when I was a teenager, where I'd get together with the boyfriend and he would say, "You did this last night." And it was exactly what I did. Or I would come visit kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
thing.
yeah. That's
And
great.
then when I was turned about 20 years old, those dreams went away, and I started having another series of dreams, which was all about this man who was teaching me. And it wasn't my husband. For those of you that know me, it wasn't him.
Yeah.
But when I first saw this man in my dreams, I was keeping a dream journal at the time. I always described him as probably born close to the year of my dad, who was born in the year 1919. And so this guy would be teaching me. He
Mhm.
would, sometimes it was in a hospital giving hands-on healings.
Mhm.
Sometimes I would be doing something else in a dream and he'd drive by on a bicycle.
That's so
And,
funny.
I'm not a gambler at all, but in one dream I had somewhere around 22 or 23, I was betting on the horses, which I've never done in my life leading up
Right.
to this point. And he comes up to me and starts talking to me. And he also told me about some of the pitfalls that I had with my relationships with men at the time.
Wow,
And
I love
I
this.
kept a record of all of this. And then
Yeah.
finally there came a time when I was really in difficult shape. I had gone through running over a dog, which thank God I didn't kill it, but it
Yeah.
ran off in the middle of the night. I, ran around the neighborhood and couldn't find him. Didn't
Oh,
see him for 6 months, and I found out he was alive, but it had been injured because I could see
yeah.
the scar on his back. He was a big dog. Right around that same time, I was married to a guy whose mother was dying of leukemia,
Wow.
and the mother died.
Mhm.
And I got in this really kind of horrific car crash, which didn't injure me bad enough to go to the hospital, but bad enough to have results,
Yeah.
neck problems and all that kind of
It's
stuff.
taken up, I'm
There
sure.
was one of those kind of accidents where you go, how did I even get through without being
Wow.
killed?
Oh my goodness.
It's one of those weird intersections where it's multiple lineups. And I had the right of way, and a sports car almost ran their red light to hit
Yeah.
me. And then as I'm turning, the traffic stops really fast here. And then a gal comes from the wrong side of the street and comes right at me.
Oh
So
no.
I swerve around her
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
went, I made it. And then I get rear-ended. I had a small car. I think it was a Lancer, if I remember. And I get rear-ended by one of these trucks with the gigantic wheels.
Oh goodness. Yes.
So my car was totaled, and talk about injury. I had a really bad
Yeah.
neck injury, and all this stuff. And I was very sad about this. No
Yes. All
car
these
and all
things
this.
converged. Yeah.
But during that period of time, and I was married to this other guy at the time, across the street from where he was working in the daytime, there was what was called an occult bookstore at the time, because there was no such thing as medical metaphysical bookstores back
That's
then. And I
that's
was
like the old
buying,
school word for it.
yeah, and I was buying these magazines. I go in there every time I went down there, but it was only out, I think, once a month or once every other month, and it was called the Psychic Reader magazine or something like that. So the day after my accident, I'm sitting at my desk at the work where I was working at the time,
Yeah.
and I had the magazine in my lap because I was just trying to deal with, everything.
Yeah.
And I turned the page and it opened up to, this place that offered psychic readings,
Mhm.
and so I called them up, and that was my introduction to going to a psychic school, which I
Wonderful.
ended up getting the training there. And going back to the thing about the old man in my dreams,
Yes.
I had been in the institute taking classes for about a year or so when his birthday came around, which I believe is around May 30th. And I signed up to go. I asked somebody to take me, and it was on a boat on the San Francisco Bay. And I didn't know anybody because most people there were from Berkeley, and I was down there in the San Jose area.
Mm.
And so where do you go when you don't know anyone, right? You go to the bar. So I go downstairs to the bar, and it's all dark, and I'm sitting there kind of by myself.
Yeah.
Not perfectly dark, but no lights on or anything, nobody at the bar. So I'm
Yeah.
sitting there going, now what do I do? And this guy came down the stairs, and all these women were, kind of buzzing around him, and he says, okay, you guys go away. And he comes and he sits down next to me.
Yeah.
And at the time, especially, I was pretty shy. So I kind of did this and
Yeah.
glanced a little bit. And he started talking to me. Oh, no, not you again. I've known you for many lifetimes, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I finally dared to turn and get a good look at him. And he was the guy from my dreams. And I
Yeah.
swear my chin
Oh my
hit the
goodness.
ground. And he says, oh, no, you remember working with me on the astral now, do you? So that was my introduction to Louis Bostwick, who was the founder of the psychic school I went to.
Yes.
So I know
The
that is
legend.
the shortened version of my story. There's a lot more to it, of
Oh,
course.
that's an amazing story that I haven't heard before.
So that it's so interesting because during my early childhood, I was a very devout Catholic. I did the rosary every day. I prayed and I tried to do good and all this kind of thing, and
Yeah.
really thought I was going to be a nun. But there was just one day when I was 8 years old, and our house was in chaos.
Mhm.
And
As it would be with that many children.
getting ready for church, and it was
Oh,
all
yes.
first on church day.
Yeah.
And my dad grabs me and puts me on his lap and goes, one day you're going to have a family just like this.
Whoa.
And I looked at him and I went, no, I am not going to have a family just like this. And of course, I wanted to say, and definitely no church on Sunday, because
Right.
I only associated it with chaos. But
Oh,
at the
right.
time, I started realizing I wasn't, inside of me, I wasn't really Catholic.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it became very crystal clear by the time I was 11. And I don't have anything against the Catholic Church. I feel like it taught me right from wrong, although I could have done without the guilt, all the guilt that went with it.
Well, guilt
But
infused.
yeah, and it also, because of the way my parents were very tolerant, not only of other people of other religions, but people of other races, which was unusual because I was born in 1952. So, when I was 8 years old, that was in the early 60s.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people still had problems with my religion is the only one, or my race is the only one, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so you made it to the Berkeley Psychic Institute, and I love that Louis Bostwick, who was the founder of that institute, was showing up in on the astral
Yes.
teaching you.
And that continued for the
Yeah.
rest of my time there. I want to talk a little bit about that because it was so interesting. I had very little time with him, one-to-one time. My husband, who I married a number of years later, once I was there, was his right-hand man for 20 years or something like that. I had very little time with him. And even after I came in and went through my training, the dreams about him backed off, but when I started becoming a teacher, they came back.
Wow.
And he was continuing to train me. And when I got sent down, Michael and I got sent down to Anaheim to start an institute down there. He still continued to train me. And it would be like a year into my training, every night I go to sleep and I'd be with him
Yeah.
learning different things.
So you'd have your
And then,
daytime training with someone and then,
well, I was doing the training by that time.
yeah.
And then about a year later, we had him down to visit our institute and do talks and stuff once a year. I went up to him to have a one little private moment with him to tell him, you graduated me from a particular course that
Yeah.
other people did in person. And
Yeah.
it didn't even come out of my mouth. And he looks at me and he goes, I know you graduated from the such and such course.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And he didn't make a deal out of it. That
Yeah.
was the thing. He didn't make a deal out of it.
Yeah.
So
That's
it,
great.
it was, to anyone who is on their awakening path, the beginning part is kind of magical,
Yeah.
especially if you're paying really close attention. And that was one of the things, because I was so sensitive and I noticed so many things, and sometimes those things would flatten me like it does most sensitive people until they get tools. It's really important to validate those experiences you have, even an intuition where you see the future.
Yeah.
Or, I remember one time I was having a conversation with a friend of mine in New York who was in this ghastly relationship. And finally, we kind of had a little showdown between the two of us. And I blurted out to her, and I really didn't mean to, but it just came out.
Yeah.
You know what's going to happen if you stay with this guy? You're going to move to New Jersey and you're going to lose all your money.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of cut me off, and I was no longer her friend, but that is exactly what ended up happening to
Wow.
her,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So I've learned to hold my tongue when I see things like that. And looking at the future isn't that important to most of us, except as let's say a guideline. If you look and see something that's negative in the future and it's within your control to change, because some things
Yeah.
are not within your control to change, that's an opportunity to change it.
Yeah. To make a new
Because
decision.
the timeline that we're on switches over. If we take a look and go, oh, we're headed for disaster here, maybe we'll change our mind about some of the things we're doing and we can go on a different path.
Yeah, I agree. Seeing the future is it's not about being afraid of what's going to happen, but more noticing what direction your current decisions are leading you in so that
Exactly.
you can fine tune and make new decisions if you need to head in a different direction.
Exactly. And, bringing it back to the thought that I was going to be a nun,
Yeah.
that was so strong for a couple of years that I have believed since I was a little girl that there was actually a split in my timeline
Ah.
where there was that part that made that decision that went off to do that.
Hmm.
And I found myself without any effort, it would just come up now and then to check up on her. How's she
Yeah.
doing? How's she doing as a nun? Because my path went very, very differently, including being married to a rock and roll guy for a bunch of years.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
Amazing. Well,
yes.
and to past life, you've definitely had those experiences as being a nun and
Yeah,
in previous
many
lifetimes.
times,
So
I'm sure.
maybe in this lifetime you were like, I think I'm good on that.
I finished up, the 2,000 rosaries that I was wanting to do last lifetime. I was
Yeah.
also done. But I still have a great affinity for Mother Mary and for the whole who is Jesus and all that kind of stuff. My exploration went more towards A Course in Miracles over many
Yeah.
years. And when I read A Course in Miracles' take on what Jesus's mission really was, that completely resonated as true, because I would argue with my mom sometimes after church and say, hey,
Yeah.
that's not what Jesus said.
Right.
And I was very little. And she'd go, how do you know? And I go,
Right.
I just know.
Yeah, she didn't like that. That's funny. So, as you moved on your path as becoming a teacher,
Yes.
what did you notice were just the biggest joys and maybe some of the challenges around teaching?
Well, the biggest joy I get out of teaching is to see people change their lives for the positive, for the better.
Yeah.
And as a beginner teacher, you're just learning the mechanics of how to teach. And I had to actually get over stage fright, which I've always had, most of my life.
Yeah.
I've had to really get over that, which I have. I think most of the time, sometimes I get on stage and I feel my legs going a little wobbly. Most of the time, not anymore.
So that's probably been a challenge then to be able to put yourself out there
Yes,
with
yes,
stage fright,
it was. And the other thing is I have allergies. So, sometimes when I'm teaching, I have to pull out the old,
Yeah.
Anyway, the main thing is I was very lucky when I finally got to teach a full-size class. My very first classes, I was taken over from someone else, and I wasn't fully graduated from the teacher's training program yet. But they threw me in these classes of 4 or 5 people, which
Yeah.
gave me the practice, and I had some very interesting experiences in those. But right when I was going in after my graduation from teachers training, and they said, okay, we're giving you a class in Palo Alto, California on these 2 days, Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb came out.
Ah.
And my classes were packed full of people. So I had to get over this
That's
stage.
great. Thank you, Shirley, for getting people interested.
Yeah, and I had some really, really interesting experiences in those, especially all the classes really, but the early classes, I did a lot of experimenting. And one of the things I did, for instance, was I had everyone get up, and in this class, I had like 35, 40 people. I had everybody get up and kind of mill around for a minute. And then I says, okay, now sit back down again.
Yeah.
And then I had everyone introduce themselves. Oh my goodness, all the hairdressers were here. I
Right.
had 3 college professors. They were right here and they didn't know each other.
Right. They were all
And
together.
so on, all the people that did certain things for a living
Wow.
sat together.
Wow.
I could not believe.
Unbeknownst to them, they just
Yep,
got flocked together.
that's right.
Wow.
So, and occasionally there would be, let's say, a psychic interruption by a being,
Hmm.
a
Those happen.
spirit who ended up climbing into one of my student spaces. One time I'm teaching, and this is to that big class with the Shirley MacLaine thing, where
Yeah.
everybody was going, okay, I'm ready for this.
Right.
So I'm teaching, and I'm watching this being trying to climb into the head of this woman.
Mhm.
And I stopped whatever I was teaching, and I put my attention on her, and they said, okay, so does anybody, especially sitting around this woman, do you notice anything? And people are going, yeah, we notice something is going on. And I said, who's Betty? And she kind of bobbed her head like this a couple times, and
Yeah.
shook her head and opened her eyes. How do you know about Betty? I've always wanted to be Betty. That was the being that was trying to climb into her head.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, those were the kind of things, and there were a lot of things like that that
Yeah.
happened over all the years that I taught classes. And mostly I taught the beginning meditation classes, probably 8 years, 2 classes a week. But also when Michael and I got together and we went down to Anaheim, I also assisted him in teaching the clairvoyant training program. So
Right.
I have that experience. And it was interesting because we got together and we continued to be in the institute for a number of years. One day I remember I was teaching a beginning class, and this thought came into my head, I have nothing else to learn here, teaching
Yeah.
in this institute.
Right.
And I knew it wasn't because I had really had my space. I knew it wasn't some negative being whispering in my ear or anything like that. I knew I was finished.
Yeah.
And so I had told Michael, when you're ready, I'm ready.
Yeah.
I had to wait another 4 years before he
Wow.
was ready.
Yeah.
So I continued, but
Yeah.
once he came around and says, "Okay, I'm ready," we went on our own, and that was in 1993. And
Wow.
then we taught together from 93 until he literally the weekend, which was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I believe, or Saturday and Sunday, before he died on the following Tuesday. Of course, the last few years of our teaching basically were on Zoom because of the pandemic. So it was
But that was a
2023.
good long run. Was that 30 years then?
30, well, all together, counting the years that we weren't, that I wasn't actually his partner, probably 42.
Yeah.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that.
But about 30 years after you left the institute and had your own teaching practice, just
That's
the two
right.
of you.
Just the 2 of us. And we
Yeah.
started from scratch, complete scratch. There was a little political thing going on in the organization, which I wanted to make sure to leave clean.
Yeah.
So I didn't take any mailing lists with me or anything. We started out fresh. We were living in south of Sacramento at the time. And then we were there for a number of years. Then we moved to Colorado. We also had an apartment down in Brentwood, Southern
Yeah.
California, to do readings, where we went down 2 weeks out of every month.
Yeah.
And sometimes I went with Michael, sometimes I didn't. But then we moved to Colorado for 7 years, and we had this incredible thing happen when we were trying to move back to Sacramento, where we ended up in Mount Shasta for 15 years.
Wow.
So, and then
Because
at
I
the
knew you lived in Mount Shasta, but I didn't know you were actually trying to move to Sacramento and
we
then
were, and
ended up
that's
there.
that's another one of those really long stories where you
Yeah.
almost wouldn't believe what happened on how we ended up there. But we were up there for 15 years, and we came back down in 2019. The fires up there and the smoke all the time was kind of affecting Michael's health
Yeah.
and mine too. It took us 4 years to sell our house,
Yeah.
and we moved temporarily to Sacramento and then out to Roseville, which is northeast of Sacramento, for him to live out his last couple years. But I'll tell you one thing, I would not have traded those years together for anything.
Yeah.
Even if someone told me, okay, we're going to tell your past self that he's going to pass away in 2023,
Right.
I would still
Yeah.
do it. I
Still.
would I would still do it. I am so grateful for the time that we got to do our work together. And let me tell you another thing,
Yeah.
why, and hopefully somebody who's listening to this can relate. When I was a little girl, I was really taken by the French scientist, Madame Marie. I loved it that in the early days, as scientists just discovering things like the X-ray, worked together
Right.
until he died. And then she continued to do her work. So I made it a goal in my life, and I didn't know what a mock-up or law of attraction or anything like that was at the time. I wanted to have a partner that wanted to do something with me, whatever it was, whether if it was going to end up in science, which I thought maybe I might end up in science, like a bunch of my siblings
Siblings.
anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
But nope, that wasn't my path. But the fact that, I tried a bunch of different relationships, and the rock and roll guy that I was with before Michael, I actually tried to create a shop for the two of us to run because he was an extremely gifted bicycle mechanic.
Oh,
But
interesting.
the day we were going to go, sign a contract, he went, I don't want to do this. So,
Oh, yeah.
so obviously,
Yeah.
I think that he got inspired by spirit, because that wasn't to be my path.
Yeah.
And so the person that I was supposed to do something with was to be Michael.
Yeah.
So that was, a bit on the romantic side, yes, but also it's hard work to keep a good relationship going where you're together 24/7.
Right.
And the thing is, after a number of years, it just became like a well-oiled machine. We
Yeah.
had we had the things that we both wanted to do. Now, Michael and I, when we were first out together after 1993, we taught together, we did readings together, we did it all together. And it got to the point where it was so busy that one of us had to step back
Wow.
and do the business.
Yeah.
And that was me.
Yeah.
So then Michael was completely the front person, and I went in the back. And I decided to make it a decision that it was okay. The only hard part of that decision was the students we ended up acquiring over the many years we did that work from the time I stepped back. A lot of them never knew that I really knew how to teach and do readings like Michael.
Right.
So that was something I had to start to recapture. Actually, a couple of years before he passed, I started to do a lot more readings again. And I didn't know, we didn't have any kind of a plan yet about what we were going to do with our groups and everything like that. So since he's passed, and that was almost 2 years ago, October 24th of 2025. And so I've had to sort of wing it. And it's been kind of a surprising outlay for this part of my life, because in my youth, I didn't think I was going to even live this long. I had a near-death experience in the late 1990s where I was told, hey, you're done with what you came to do.
Oh.
This is all bonus life here.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that my husband had many near-death experiences from a heart issue that he had. And he got told, he was being kind of renewed after his first heart attack. I think it was the last heart attack he had was the one that did him in, which
Yeah.
is number 9.
Yeah. He
So
had more than 9 lives.
so isn't that interesting? Number 9 is the number of completion.
Yeah.
So
He's like
we,
a cat then, huh? 9 lives.
yeah, 9 lives. That's right. But we had an incredible adventure in our lives together. He was quite the traveler. I don't travel as well, but he made it so much fun.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the time he had been going to Switzerland for a while and starting to teach this group consistently.
Mm.
So he wanted me to see Switzerland with him. So I came, and, it's a long flight.
It is.
It is a very long flight to Switzerland, and I get very jet lagged and exhausted. But as soon as we arrived, he's like, "Put your boots on. I want to take you on a tour." And he was so
Hit the
happy
ground
and
running.
so enthusiastic. And
Yeah.
here's the lake, and here's the downtown. By the way, it was
You
Zurich,
in
and it was
Zurich.
one of the most beautiful cities I have ever been in. We had so many adventures together, and I know one of the questions you were wanting to ask me is really about what was it like to be the co-person to someone like Michael.
Right.
And
You
it was,
teaching kind of behind the scenes,
yes,
because
yes,
you're still teaching because you're so present in spirit with all the groups, but maybe, not the front person, as you said,
yeah,
not the one that
exactly.
people notice.
Yeah, and sometimes I got to do meditations
Yeah.
at the front of the room. But I also had a little bookstore with jewelry and stuff like that, so I got to talk to everyone in the back.
Yeah.
And I also cooked for the groups.
Really the caretaker of the group energy.
Well, what was really fun about that part was I really got to see over the years as we were creating, especially our advanced community, how people were starting to volunteer. At the very beginning, when we started doing a set of group classes in our house when we first moved to Mount Shasta, I did all the cooking for 2 meals plus snacks all day and all that kind of stuff, and everybody partook.
Yeah.
It was one day when one of the students walked in, seeing me, slicing and dicing veggies,
Yeah.
and she said, "Would you like some help?"
Yeah.
Once one person did that, I started having a rotation of people helping me, and I never required it of everybody. But as a group grows together, we're a psychic spiritual group who are all interested in the betterment of mankind, if you will, and the raising of the vibration on the planet. Being able to actually physically work together and get along, and I got to watch it come together more and more and more and more, where I had lots of volunteers helping me set up my bookstore for the events and
Yeah.
coming in sometimes I would be in there at 3 or 4 in the morning, getting things ready for breakfast. And the early birds would come over to the community building and help me with some of those things. So,
Yeah.
the building community, I think, is almost as important as the meditation and everything else
Absolutely. Yeah.
that we did.
Absolutely.
And so during the time right after Michael passed, since we didn't have a plan in place, because even though he had been ill, he not only had heart disease, but he also January 1st of 2023, actually January 5th, got diagnosed with leukemia, AML, which is the most aggressive form of it. It seemed like he was doing so well that we would have him around for a while, so we didn't make a plan. So
Yeah.
one of the things that was very interesting when he did pass, and of course it was still devastating to lose him, the community came together and really supported me while we created his memorial service for a couple months later. And then, it was my birthday 3 weeks after he
Yeah.
died, and then Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, and then New Year's, just
Yeah.
one thing after another like that. And then suddenly there was this, and I know I've heard other widows say this, but I got to experience it myself. There was a time when certain people just scattered away
Wow. Yeah.
and there was nothing,
Yeah.
So as I was trying to, let's say, maintain a level of our community,
Mhm.
the biggest growth I went through wasn't so much about Michael's passing, because he had had heart trouble for 17 years. I was
Yeah.
preparing for it all
You got a
those
lot of
years,
practice with preparing.
all the hugs and loves
Yeah.
and caring, and it was so appreciated. But once everything got quiet, it was the strangest feeling,
Yeah.
because for me, after the worst griefy part of losing him, he's with me all the time in my dream state.
Yeah.
So that's one thing about having a great dream state is that's where the people on the other side can connect with
Right.
you.
Right.
And so I felt more and more comfortable with that. And he comes around when I'm teaching my classes. And
Yes.
I get notes from people saying, I felt him or I heard
Yeah.
him.
He's
And he
very
had this
present.
amazing laugh. You know, our new website that he set up before he passed is livethemiracle.com. But you can also look him up, Michael Tamura or
Yeah.
Michael J without a period, Michael J Tamura. You can look him up on YouTube. He's just got this wonderful, wonderful
Yeah.
laugh.
Yes.
And that
I
was,
still hear that laugh every time I say
yep,
hello to him.
yep. That's what I got to hear today when I got a call from a friend who wasn't doing so well. And I said, okay, I'll sit down and do some work. And I said, Michael, I have to go on this interview in a few minutes. Can you give her some help?
Yeah.
And that's what I heard. Ha, ha, ha.
He's just laughing.
But that didn't mean he didn't go help her.
Right. No,
So
it wasn't a careless laugh. It's just
exactly.
lots of joy.
So the last 2 years, it's been a process of rebuilding and also taking my ownership of my ability to teach.
Yes.
And at first, it was a little difficult because Michael is a very, very natural teacher. He takes some notes for teaching, but for the most part, it just came out in from the heavenly planes and
Yes.
through.
Yeah.
And I spend upwards 6 to 18 hours on my each of my classes, and
Wow.
it's getting easier with
Yeah.
each one. I've taught 2 classes a month since the end of 2023. And of course, anybody that wants to check those out can go to our Live the Miracle site,
Yes.
livethemiracle.com. Not living, but livethemiracle.com. And there was another fun thing that we did, which was great, which was our radio show. We did that for
Yes.
5 years. And that has an interesting kind of psychic story to it, is that we got contacted from voiceamerica.com, which is where we ended up doing this, and said that he had come across our videos and really were interested in having us on there. So we went through the process. And right before we were to start, the October before, for 3 days, Michael had been complaining about hearing this beeping sound. And he says, it's not happening all the time, but I hear it.
Yeah.
So one day I was blow drying my hair and he's in the shower
Yeah.
and he steps out and he goes, I'm hearing that sound.
Uh-huh.
And he dried himself off and I said, come here. And I put my head to his chest because he had a device in there.
Oh, right. Yes.
And that doggone device was the thing that was beeping. And it turned out to be defective.
Oh, no.
So, that wasn't as big a deal. They're, let's say, not as huge a surgery to replace, but he got it replaced. And when he had that operation, somebody did something wrong.
Right.
And it pretty much destroyed his voice.
Right.
And I would always go to his doctor's appointments with him, his follow-up appointments from the surgeon, and follow-up appointments with his cardiologist and everything else. And I would start to talk about it. The doctors would turn around and walk out of the room. They would
Yeah.
not talk to me about this.
They did not want
So,
to own up to that.
yeah. So right before our radio show, his voice was damaged. And he said he sounded like what do you call it? A hitman from the
Yeah.
mafia.
Yeah. Yeah. It had a little bit of Darth Vader like
Yep.
quality to it.
And then at the same time, I had this incident many years earlier that had caused my allergies, and suddenly they got worse right before the radio
Yeah.
show. So
Yeah.
we both have funny sounding voices,
Right.
especially at the beginning. But the radio show was called Living the Miracle with Michael and Raphaelle Tamura.
Yeah.
And we're not on there anymore. Living the Miracle radio shows up on Michael's YouTube channel. Those are free to listen to. And even though both of our voices sound pretty bad,
Just at the beginning, though, right? Just as it was.
well, I think Michael, it took him about 3 years to be able to get somewhat of his voice back where he could actually sing again. He couldn't even
Thank you.
sing because Michael had other talents as well.
Absolutely.
He wrote over 100 songs. He was an amazing sculptor and as well as a painter, artist. So he had all these gifts. And I know I'm talking about him a lot, but
But he really focused on the teaching, and you both
he
focused
did.
on the teaching
That's
in
right.
such a profound way, like 30 years of just independently teaching But like you said, in so many different avenues, you were hosting groups at your house and then hosting them in larger venues. You're doing all of these interviews and these radio shows as
Right.
well. You're traveling to different parts of the world
Yep.
to teach. You were very active,
We were. And to have that all
very full schedule.
stop, even though we had been sort of stopped at the beginning of the pandemic and through it,
Right. Things
it
have to,
really felt stopped when
yeah.
he passed.
Yeah.
And that was the strangest thing.
It
two
was
years
an
into it,
abrupt change
it
for
was
sure.
very abrupt. And also, there were a few kind of little funky things that happened with our organization. But for the most part, everyone has been amazing in our organization,
Yeah.
which is, when I talk about our organization, it's our advanced students who go through either a clairvoyant program somewhere by a teacher that's approved by us, or takes Michael's 21-month course, which is called Spiritual Tools and Life Mastery Practices for Living Your Soul's Purpose. It's a long title.
Yes. No, he always had very thorough titles,
Yes, we did. And
that you really had to look up in order to remember.
yes, and that course is still available
Yes.
on our Live the Miracle site. So if you have any questions about that, you can always
Yes,
write to one of
contact
us
you.
or
You know,
whatever.
that I can speak to that course because it's super comprehensive. I remember when Michael taught that live, and of course now those are in the recorded version and
Right.
available. And I had already, been a student of clairvoyance for a very, very long time, but it was still extremely thorough and comprehensive. And probably the most of any that I had experienced in that sort of
Yeah.
beginner level. It's moves quite a bit beyond the beginner level and really covers all of the
Yeah.
territory. Yeah,
It does. And he's
thorough.
such a fun teacher to listen to and
Yeah.
practice with.
Yes.
So I know that's a little promo for that, but if people don't know about that, well, they don't know what we have available.
Right.
And of course, I'm still teaching 2 classes a month, once for our advanced group. And by the way, what I was getting to before is if you take that course, you can be in our advanced group, which is called Shape, Seers and Healers Advanced Practice Experience.
That's
That's the way I
right.
always say it.
Yes.
And I'm still continuing to teach that class, and mostly getting people to keep going and to practice their tools and whatever else I can muster up from spirit to teach
Yeah.
students.
It's such an important time for people to have a spiritual practice. I don't really know how anyone is surviving right now without one,
Yeah,
without having tools to center and ground and access your
laugh.
information and really be able to create from your own energy and not
Yes,
just be the effect of all of the chaos going on in
yes,
the world.
absolutely,
So important
absolutely.
that you're
Yes,
continuing to teach
thanks.
and it looks good on you.
Thank you. Thank you. The second class I teach every month is open to everyone, including
Yes.
the advanced students. And I'm having a great time with that. My next class is October 4th, and it's going to be centered around spirit communication because it's
Yes.
Halloween month, right?
It's all about spirit communication.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering because you mentioned Course in Miracles earlier,
Hmm.
and I too have been a student of A Course in Miracles for many years, and it always spoke to me. And I would love if you'd like to share about just how you weave the two together, like, clairvoyant training with the understanding of what Jesus was teaching, and what he expresses through A Course in Miracles. Do you want to
Well,
share anything about that?
I think the best way I can is that, to me, A Course in Miracles is a course in mastering forgiveness and going on your ascension path.
Yes.
And I think if you've gone through A Course in Miracles without, outside influences, other Course in Miracles people or whatever, some people don't even know it's about forgiveness.
Right.
And
I've noticed that.
yes. So I
Yeah.
think the way I can answer your question is to tell you a little about how I ended up with A Course in Miracles, because for one thing, it had been chasing me around for years. From the time I had been teaching in Anaheim back in, 1990 or
That's
89
so
or whenever it
funny.
was new.
I
And
had
then
a similar experience. That's why I'm laughing.
yeah,
I didn't put it that way, but that's how it was chasing me around. Like it would pop up in different parts of my life. Yeah.
exactly.
Nice.
So one of the students that we had really wanted us to look at it, and because he was doing it, and in order for him to take the clairvoyant training, Michael had told him, you have to set that aside for now and do this, and you can do that later, which he
Yeah.
did. But it had been chasing me around. In fact, after we left Anaheim and moved back up to Sacramento in 93, I was in a bookstore and saw a 5-part done by Richard Thomas, the actor. He did bits and pieces of A Course in Miracles on CD. It was just when books and things on CD
Yeah.
were new.
Yeah.
And so I bought that and I started listening to it on my traveling around doing errands. And at the time, though I didn't always agree with what I heard, I always felt more peaceful. So when we moved to Mount Shasta, that got lost and I sort of forgot about it.
Yeah.
And fast forward to
Chased you down though.
2006, actually, by this time it was 2007.
Mhm.
It was about a year after Michael's first heart attack, and he wasn't getting better. What a lot of people didn't know was it took Michael 3 years to recuperate from his first heart attack.
Wow.
And it was better after that. It was more like a 6-week process
Yeah.
every time. But
Mhm.
that first one, I think some people go through this when they go through a very threatening heart crisis of any kind, physical, especially men, really, they have to look at their mortality.
Right.
And so he was going through this long process, which was excruciating for me.
Mm.
And one day I'm walking my beautiful dog Shanti, who was a Great Pyrenees, all white Great Pyrenees, walking down the street with her.
Yeah.
And I put my fist up into the air and said, what the heck, God? What are you doing to him? I didn't know any better at the time. Why? He's a man of God. What is all this suffering? What is this? Oh, it
Mhm.
really gave him the what for. And on top of that, why is it when we eat chocolate we get fat? What is that all about? And gravy, it
What
makes
a
us even
horrible
fatter.
setup.
And I took that walk. It was about a 2.5 mile walk, and I'm coming uphill. And one of my neighbors, who I only saw once or twice because he was a golf pro and traveling around all the time, he happened to be out in front of his house, which in this neighborhood, the houses are set way back.
Yeah.
But he was out on the street and he saw me, and first thing he said was, "What's wrong with you, Raphaelle?" So I boohooed to him about what was going on with Michael. I was really unhappy about it. And he said, "Well, I want to get you this book." And I said, "I'm a bookseller, and I'm pretty sure I have that book at my father-in-law's house." And I'm not talking about A Course in Miracles, but a book called Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard.
Yes.
And I said, "I think I have a copy of that book somewhere." So no,
Well,
no
this was so
thanks.
your neighbor first recommended that.
Yes. So
Interesting.
I go home and, kind of forget about it. Then I decide to go into town later that day. And our office was on Elma Street,
Mhm.
which, by the way, means spirit, which is
Wow, I didn't
interesting.
know that.
Yeah.
Alma.
And right across is a oil change place. And when I got to the office, I had someone running the office there. He was there and he saw me going into the office and he chases after me with his book in his hand. And he said, "I want to give you my sister's copy of this book,"
Yeah.
which he did. And I read it and I read it again and I read
Mm.
it again. And then I got the audio book on CD and listened to it over and over and over again. And on the 8th listen, on my way over to my hairdresser's in Medford, because that's what I did, drove an hour and a half to go to a hairdresser at the time, the CD player broke.
Wow.
And I heard my guide come in and say, "Now you got to do A Course in Miracles. You got
Right.
to stop listening to this. That's enough, you know."
That's hilarious. You're
And
like,
then
thanks for breaking my CD player.
then it started working after that. But
Right,
I,
right,
I, I
right.
heard the message. And I love all of Gary's books, by the way. A
Yes.
little plug for him. His book is an amazing introduction to A Course in Miracles
Yeah.
and also has a pretty miraculous story of its own. So I did A Course in Miracles for a year, and then I gave it a break for a year and did it again for another year.
Oh, wow.
So not that I consider myself an expert, but it's definitely integrated into my practices now. Eventually, when you go on the path of ascension, even being attached to something like your psychic abilities isn't necessary. But, in my own meditations and working with the two, the Course in Miracles actually teaches you a thought system, and it's a non-dualistic thought system, which
I think that's
when I'm doing a reading on someone, I'm looking at auras and I'm looking at energy and situations and all that. That's all part of the dualistic universe,
right.
right? And all
But
the things.
without that understanding of non-duality, forgiveness is hard. Like
That's
I
right.
have people ask me, well, how do you forgive? And when I look at it, it's like forgiveness just naturally extends from the understanding of non-duality and
That's right.
and the nature of the infinite.
Exactly.
Otherwise it would be like, yeah, your mind doesn't want to do that. It doesn't want to forgive.
It's, that's why it's the master program here. It's the hardest thing any human has to learn.
Yeah.
And so one of the basic teachings too is something I've already known, but as I've gone through the growth that I went through just taking the course, you realize the one teaching that is we're living in an illusion
Yeah.
or a video game or however you want to see
Yeah.
it. It's a
Yeah. Michael
false.
often used the words video game, and I thought
Yeah,
that was
he
fun.
got that from me.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of his expressions he got from me.
Good, good. Good to
or
know.
or they I think they call it a false universe in the course, but this isn't really true
Yeah.
here. So, when I'm giving someone a reading, I'm well aware that even though I'm here and I have this ability to see energy and all that kind of stuff, that ultimately it all isn't true.
Right.
And so, even now in my current time, which is how many years since 2007 when I started it, many years, I haven't completely reconciled that. But one of the things I do know is that Spirit has shown me through particular kinds of experiences where I get to, for a very short period of time, because this is how it works,
Yeah.
I get to experience the oneness
Yeah.
where you're the sky, you're the garbage can, you're the house, you're everything. And
Yes,
that
yes,
also you made it all up
yes,
kind
yes.
of thing.
Yeah.
And when you have that experience, usually human beings, if you get to a point where you have an experience like that, it's temporary because our minds are not quite ready to have it full time.
Yeah.
So
And
we
we
get,
might not be a very functional human being if we were constantly in that state.
especially if we weren't prepared for it.
Right, right.
So I actually asked in meditation about, okay, well, I'm doing this psychic work and it's worked for me all these years and there's miracles that happen in the healings a lot of times and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, none of that is true. And so
Yeah.
in
I think,
meditation, I asked about it
yeah,
and they said, it's okay. It's okay. You're here. So why don't you do something that helps people?
right. We're still
And
here being human. And I think it
exactly.
actually makes you a better reader. I think when someone understands the truth of
Hmm.
the eternal
Yep.
and therefore can easily forgive, it makes you a better reader because there's a deeper healing that happens when
Yes.
you're blowing your pictures because it's
Yes.
natural for you to forgive, to let go.
That's
It
right.
it really opens the door for the other person who's receiving the reading to forgive because
That's
that
right.
energy is just naturally present. So,
Yes.
yeah.
That's right. Whether it's matching your energy or just getting it for themselves once
Right.
it's communicated.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting journey to have those two paths kind of converge and to just be okay that, when I say none of it's true, if I were a master carpenter and doing A Course in Miracles, still none of it is true.
Yeah. But you can still make
So,
a
but you
beautiful,
can still make a beautiful cabinet,
right.
right? So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important because it does happen, I think, to some course students where you hit that realization of, oh my God, none of this is true. But then there might be this fall into sort of apathy or like, well, then why it doesn't matter.
Yeah, in fact, that's a
But
very early growth period for some
right.
people in that course.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Because then beyond that, there's the importance of still living your life and being a human and really embodying that
yes,
awareness. Like basically being able to have non-duality without resisting duality, right? Without,
yep,
because you
yep.
can't really have duality or non-duality if you're resisting duality, because then you're making duality real.
That's right. You got it.
You gotta still be a human, right? And just have that, be able to have that joy and neutrality and lovingness and
Yes,
forgiveness.
Yeah.
throughout all of the ups and downs of being a human and non-attachment. I think that's what some of the Eastern traditions, it's been worded as non-attachment.
Yes.
Just that level of forgiveness of all of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also that we get, something in Gary's book that they talked about was having that ultimate forgiveness exercise.
Yes.
So having the death of a beloved, close spouse
Yeah.
could be considered something like that. But, for me, it was a little bit of what happened afterwards.
I bet that was
And the thing I talked about, I'm just going to gloss it over
yeah,
for the sake of time, but there were some challenges in our groups,
right.
and it was very hurtful.
And
And
everybody's adjusting. Yeah.
yeah, but I had that information. It's like it's not real. You can forgive it.
Can
You
forgive it.
can forgive yourself. You can forgive the other person or persons. And to me, that's how I made it through this. And it's not that I didn't grieve as hard as any person who lost their spouse. It's just I knew the truth of his death wasn't really death.
Yeah.
Because
And
to
you're still
me,
in communication with him.
absolutely.
That's
And
the
his,
beauty of knowing spirit when someone dies, okay, their
yeah,
body dies, and as a human you miss them, you miss their
miss the
physical
body.
presence,
Yeah.
but he's still in communication with you
Yes.
so much, as I know that you're well aware of and have shared with me. And so
Yeah.
I think there's a different grieving for someone who knows spirit really
Yeah.
well. It's not that you
Yeah.
don't have any grief, but you're not stuck in it. It's
Yes.
it's a process of allowing that human experience to happen and be with the loss while
Yeah.
having what you can never lose, right?
Yes.
Spirit presence. So
Absolutely.
then all
And
the other human things that happen afterwards.
yeah.
Everybody's adjusting to him being gone and
Yeah.
having
I
all of their experiences with, well, now who are you?
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
you've got to, well, so it might have been a little bit of a prove it game. Is that has that been your experience? Like feeling like you might need to prove yourself as a teacher, even though
Well,
you've always been, but now people might
I
see
haven't
you.
really felt that because, I understand the bond a lot of people had with Michael,
Yeah,
that, it's not for me to get in the way of that.
yeah,
And in that, I think Michael was a very advanced spiritual teacher. Um, and some people never saw me as his equal.
yeah.
And in some ways, I'm not, in the sense of I'm not him.
Right.
But we got the same training, and he was the one that trained me partially in my later years of my training. I was in his classes before we were ever together. But, we basically got the same training, and I feel like I got extra training because behind the scenes, he was showing me how to do certain things that I didn't take any other classes for. So to us, we were equal partners.
Yeah,
And he always treated me that way. And I really appreciated it, but not everyone in our group saw me that way.
yeah,
And that was for me to forgive,
yeah.
even though even though, when you're in a group, you have that experience of people kind of sidling up to you going, oh, I like you. And you're such a great psychic, and you're such a great this, and you're such a great that. And
Mm.
then, after he dies, it's like, adios to me.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was it was just all a ruse to, get closer to him. But, these are the things that happen in groups.
yeah.
And during that very emotional time after someone dies like that, I was a little more vulnerable, which I think made it more of an advanced exercise for me on that forgiveness level. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it or anything,
Yeah.
but I think I've done a pretty good job.
I think you have.
And Michael has made some very fun appearances to me.
Mm.
Right after he died, I got to see him in this place that reminded me of a 10 times bigger Nevada Oaks Best Western Inn room. Remember that
Wow.
place?
Yeah, I
It
remember
was
that.
about 10 times, maybe 15 times bigger than that, with a big stage. He's getting ready to go up to talk to everyone because of his passing being so sudden. And
Yeah.
I'm in the back of the room, just like normal in life.
Right,
Just like our
right.
normal life. I'm in the back of the room.
Yeah.
And this one student appears next to me who's passed over already.
Mm.
And I'm giving her a big hug. And some of the advanced students coming in didn't see her.
Right. Right.
So they're going, who are you talking to, Raphael?
Right.
And I'm like, you're on the astral. You should bring your clairvoyance with you. But basically, what Michael was doing in this gathering, and there were probably 15,000 people. I don't know. It just seemed like a lot of people.
Yeah.
He was getting them ready for the rest of his transition to this other place.
Mm.
And the other place, I talked about this at his memorial service, I believe was what is known as Shambhala.
Yeah.
And to me, it looked like the shape of it from the outside looked like Deep Space Nine in Star Trek. It was a big wheel with these kind of things protruding out of
Oh,
it
interesting.
and
Yeah.
a grounding, an energetic grounding right into the earth, but it's way above the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And he was telling everyone, I'm here temporarily so I can say my proper goodbye to you and let me take my energy back from you.
Right.
You
Kind of a
take your
clean
energy
break.
back from me. Yep. So it was a very nice talk.
Yeah.
And he showed a picture of what the inside of this place was, and the uh, gathering place could hold millions.
Oh, yeah.
And when he showed it, I remember seeing that in my dream state several times over the years,
Yeah.
is being in crowds in that same place where people who are in bodies gather to get talks from the masters, because Shambhala is basically the energetic home for the masters of wisdom of this earth,
Yes.
and sometimes visiting masters from other places as
Yeah.
well. So that was one of his appearances to me. And
Wonderful.
then another one was kind of cute, is I was watching TV one night, and I'm watching this show, and there's two guys on the screen. I don't even remember what show it was, and they're blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And you know how TV screens have kind of a sheen to them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I see a silhouette walking by,
Yeah, like a
and I'm
reflection.
like, my first thought was, is somebody in the house? Because I'm kind of laying on the couch, and the couch top is about this high compared to where my head was.
Yeah.
So I turned my head, and of course, nothing was there. And then it just disappeared right off the screen.
Oh,
So
oh my goodness.
he let me see him really
Yeah.
quickly on the TV
Yeah.
screen. He's like, hi. And of course, he showed up in my dream state the night after he died. And he said he was okay and fine. And he showed up very similarly a month and a day afterwards,
Mm.
which was the day that our cat Merlin had been really ill before he died. And then Merlin died a month and a day after he did.
Oh wow.
And he was holding Merlin.
Aw.
And the first time he showed up in my dream holding Merlin, Merlin was freaking out. And
Yeah.
I actually ended up waking up. It was like 2 in the morning, and kind of scared. It kind of scared me a little because of how he freaked out. And then I fell back to sleep, and I had the same dream over again. Only this time, Merlin was all calm and happy and letting me pet him and everything. So
Oh,
we both made it over.
they
And yes,
did.
our pets do go to the heavenly planes as well.
I love that.
They
Yes,
do
they
have
do.
souls.
Yeah, body. Oh, so wonderful. Thank you so much for communicating with me today, Raphael, and
Thank
sharing
you.
just your path and your wisdom and where you are currently with your teaching space and just how far you've come in the growth process of being a teacher with someone who's both seen and known as a teacher and then being more behind the scenes and now coming out again.
So we'll see where that takes me. I've been thinking about it an awful lot because, I'd like to see where this takes me.
Yeah.
I teach more classes. I also, of course, I call them reading healing sessions, which
Yes.
are 2 hours long. And that's one of my absolute joys to do as
Yeah.
well.
And I love that it all started in this lifetime with your dream, your recurring dream from
Yes.
your guide, really showing you. Just it's beautiful to come full circle and realize, like, yep, they were right. Here I am.
Yep. And one of the biggest things I've learned from being a new widow is being grateful for what I asked for as an 11-year-old. I want a partner who
Yeah.
does the same thing I do, and I want to do it together with him for a lifetime. I got to have that.
Yeah.
And so I have now nothing but incredible gratitude for that.
Yeah. What an incredible journey you both had together. And
Yeah, thank you.
to just own that that was your creative will. You put that seed out there at 11. That's profound.
Yeah.
and got
Yep.
to experience the fruition of that.
Absolutely. And the thing about visualizing and really holding that vision, you can make your dreams come true that way, unless it's not your path.
Yeah.
And another part of my youth was I wanted to take a musical path, be a
Yeah.
singer, and I learned guitar and electric guitar and all these things. And every time I tried to get on the musical path, even when I was young in school, something would happen where it couldn't happen right.
Right.
So, that's sometimes when you're being told this is not your path. Sometimes it's because you're supposed to work for that.
Yes.
If you're getting a lot of blocks to something you really want to do, Spirit is telling you, if you want to do this, you got to do this kind of work before you get it. But I got the message. Music was not my path this lifetime, though I love music. And I still have a beautiful Taylor guitar. I pick it up once in a while, but this was my path.
Yeah. And it
So,
can still be a beautiful part of your life
yeah,
for
absolutely.
your own enjoyment and creative expression.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that is an important bit of wisdom for sure.
Thanks. Well,
Yeah.
Jean, thank you so much for having me on your show. I
You're so
really,
welcome.
really appreciate this.
I enjoy our time together so much and really enjoyed all your stories and
Thank
learned
you.
more about you in the process as
How
well.
about that? All right. Well, thank
Thank you
you. Thank
so
you. Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on The Higher Vibe. We will see you next time.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Thank you again, Jean.
You're so welcome. Hello, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Share this with friends. Really helps us out, and we really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you next time.